Good afternoon and welcome, everybody. This would be the Jeff Cameron Show right here on 97.9 ESPN Radio. Thanks for tuning to it. I'm Jeff. That's Tom. We're online, ESPNTallahassee.com. That's where you're going to listen live via the streaming free. As always, you can listen, of course, on the terrestrial radio. Imagine that. You can email if you like, jcs at 979ESPNradio.com. We appreciate those emails. Oftentimes lead to good fodder on the program and interesting insight and observations. Keep them coming. On Twitter, it's at J Cameron Show. And hello, YouTubers. It is good to be with you as well. Thanks for watching on YouTube. All guests appear via the Phone Hero hotline. Phone Hero specializing in iPhone and iPad repair. 2 locations, 2915 Cary Forest Parkway and 833 West Gain Street. Online at phoneherotlh.com. Man, we have a lot to catch up on today. It was a busy, fruitful weekend for Florida State on a lot of levels. It was a big weekend in the ACC, of course, in the National Football League as well. I want to begin the show by, again, acknowledging and certainly wishing him all the positive energy in the universe, Keyontae Johnson, who remains in stable condition, critical but stable condition. And really that was, I think, on the minds of almost anybody that paid attention to the sports world this weekend. And in particular, if you were in attendance at the Florida State-Florida basketball game, you know, Tom and I, in the interest of transparency, we're here in this very studio conducting Tallahassee Game Day and a court report. We did so because of the unique tip time for that game being 11 a.m. Instead of going on at 10, we went on at 9. And so, Tom, you and I were both in the car immediately following the show when this took place. And it took my breath away listening to it. Certainly going back, I've seen the replay and the different angles and photos, and I don't need to go through that again. It's just, you know, I'm old enough to remember, Tom, you were 4 years old, but I remember Hank Gathers collapsing on the floor and dying after, ironically, a two-handed alley-oop dunk and collapsing to the floor and passing away. And I remember it was my first year out of high school. It was 1990. I do believe that is the case. I was stunned. Unfortunately, it's not the only time that's happened, but if you live long enough and you follow sports, you can remember every tragic situation. And you can certainly, as it pertains and specific to basketball, remember it. Fortunately, it happens too often in basketball. And I don't want to speculate about the causes or reasons right now. That's not my place to do so. So we'll continue to wait information. But every time, it's arresting. You don't really care anymore about basketball or whatever the sport may be. You don't. You know, at the end of the day, they elected to continue to play. I was kind of surprised by that. Kudos to, and again, I'm not condemning anybody. I just was surprised by that, especially given the reaction of the two teams and the players, most of whom could be seen visibly shaken to their core, in some cases weeping, understandably. I do know it's important in a situation like that, when it's a member of another team and not a Florida State teammate or player, that you want to be sure that your school, at Florida State in this case, is doing the right thing and providing every possible means of helping and aiding in that situation for the opposing team. And I am proud that Coach Ham and the staff did the right thing here in saying it's up to Coach White and his staff and the University of Florida. We'll do whatever they'd like to do. Gave them numerous opportunities to think about that and what they wanted to do. And the team ultimately, as said by Coach White, they put it to a vote and they elected to play. Again, I'm surprised they did play, but that's what they decided. And so the game continued, and it's a game that Florida State won. It felt a little hollow. There's a lot to document in that game as far as the fine play of several individuals, in particular the continued shooting star that is Scottie Barnes. I don't want to get into and overanalyze a game that feels, to me, secondary in the big picture. But Florida State wins for the 7th straight time. Scottie Barnes does some amazing things on the floor, as one-and-doneers sometimes do, and I think we're seeing a phenom here at Florida State, unlike any we've ever seen before. I think we're just scratching the surface, quite obviously. But we've got a lot of time to analyze about what Florida State will be. I think there's a way to delicately talk about that game today while being respectful. But I wanted to begin the show and just note that Keyontae Johnson, without question, is first and foremost on our minds and our thoughts and well wishes. He and his family and friends and the University of Florida basketball program. That was horrific, and it's difficult to even to bring up here. But I don't think you can go on with the show and have some fun like we do on this show without at least first acknowledging that situation and acknowledging and that we're thinking about him, because I feel for anybody that was there in attendance. We were not, Tom. We were in the car, as I was alluding to.
Oh, but you could hear the yelling and communicating
gasps,
in the background of not only fans but then the personnel on the courts, and that by itself is stunning because you're wondering what's going on. You can't see the picture.
Yeah, I'm gripping my steering wheel, going, "What is going on? This is not good. Oh God, please!" You're just thinking, "Don't let it be the worst. Don't let it be the worst." It's a brutal situation. Obviously, the medical personnel there did what they do, which is try to save a life and attend to the individual as quickly as possible. Ironically, we were up in the box. Was it last year or 2 years ago when a fan?
I think it was last season.
Collapsed.
That was post game. And that looked dire as well.
Yes, it did. Yeah, it's like I said, it's arresting. You can't move. You can't breathe. You just kind of. You don't know what to do.
You want to see the person move.
Yeah, you just feel helpless. So, our well wishes and all the positive energy in the universe sent his way to he and his family. Now, let's segue here if we can. Difficult to do. Football. Florida State gets a win. It's as good as the offense has looked in some time. Duke's terrible. I don't want to overstate that either, but I do know that it acted as a salve for a lot of reasons. Florida State's been spectacularly poor on the football field this year. It's hard to imagine seeing a Florida State football product look this bad. We all know it's a culmination of many things that have led to this, and we've sought to vet that as many times as you possibly can. It's probably grown tiresome to some. So to get a win, to score 56 points, to move the ball the way they did, certainly was uplifting. Again, defense is what it is, which is not very good. But I will say, plenty of hustle there, a lot of heart, a lot of the young guys that are going to be a part of the solution moving forward were on the field Saturday. You saw that hustle. You saw that want to. You saw that commitment, and that hasn't always been there this year. So I think, again, the young men that took the field Saturday and that will take the field again, knock on wood, this upcoming Saturday against Wake, they want to win, and they are committed, and they have sacrificed a ton. Now, you're looking all around college football right now, and today more news comes down the pike. Teams opting out of conference championship games, teams opting out of bowl games potentially, teams having players say, look, say about us what you will, we're done. And this is the mental fatigue of what these guys have had to go through. And it's a season, we've said it countless times, unlike any other, and it truly is, in that it isn't just that the uncertainty weighs heavy. And imagine the amount of testing you have to be tested, then you've got to wait for the results of that test, and you're tested again, and you've got to wait for the results of that test, and again, you're walking on eggshells. Practices are not conducted in the same way as a typical football season would see them conducted. So the gains and the pluses and minuses are different. Defining what's a successful week has changed dramatically. What coaches can and can't do to instill culture and or the playbook radically altered. We see bizarre results all the time. I mean, as much fun as it was for me to watch the University of Miami throw up all over themselves, humiliate themselves on national TV in a way that is historical, and throw away any opportunity to go to an Orange Bowl and change their reputation as something other than the losers that they've been for 20 years. It was glorious, admittedly, but I have to admit also, if I'm going to say this, about the bizarre results that we see only in 2020, even though it is indicative of the way Miami lets down at the end of every season when they have something to gain. it does seem even bizarre for them to give up 7,000 yards in one game. It is remarkable for any team that has grown men on it who lift weights and work hard to give up more than 500 yards rushing to somebody. And as bad as Florida State's defense has been this year, and it has been tragically bad, they don't look like that and do that in any game. So, my goodness gracious, that was something, but it seems very 2020, very, very unique to this particular season.
Yeah, but the idea of them being disappointing is not unique.
No.
In fact, since the millennium.
It's who they are. That's true.
Yeah. So for me, what was really interesting was seeing somebody make a play when everything was going the other way against Florida State. Now, the officials helped us out, and so did Duke's mistakes at the end of the second quarter where they get into a 1st and 40. Had there been 2 minutes on the clock, I felt like in that moment that might be a fair fight for as poorly as our defense was playing in that sequence. At 1st and 40 may be attainable. They might be able to do it at Duke. But then in the second half, with the game 28-21, Brendan Gant makes his second big play of the game. And that's where he hits Chase Bryce, and we hope Chase is doing okay with whatever injury he might have suffered on the hit. But it's a game-changing hit. It jars the ball loose.
Yeah.
Florida State gets the football. 2 plays later, Jordan Travis is in the end zone. Now it's 35-21, and you stem the tide. Because for about an hour and a half...
Oh, it felt like so many other moments where we've watched big leads slip away and become not only non-leads, but losses eventually.
We were going to blow a 28-0 lead on Duke, and that was how the streak was going to end. That's what it felt like for all of halftime, for all of the second quarter, as you saw this thing building, and somebody finally stepped up and said, no, not today, and that was Gant, and good for you, young man.
Yeah, good for you, young man, and good for that team to get a win. And again, I'm cautious about overemphasizing a win over Duke in which you give up 35 points and almost blow a 28-point lead. But thank goodness for little gains here and there, moments that reveal a little bit different side of the personality and perhaps connectivity between this coaching staff and its players. Because as much as we like to take shots at the University of Miami for humiliating themselves in that moment, it does reveal a disconnect between Manny Diaz, his team, and their coaches and players. There's no way in that situation you could have the kind of game that they did. Their own players said it, by the way. You can get mad at me if you want, but their players said it was a matter of not being locked in. I don't know where it started, but it's completely unacceptable. We had some guys that weren't there. They weren't willing to pay the price for it. That's from senior wide receiver Mike Harley. I got a lot of quotes from them admitting that they just quit.
So you mean to tell me a wide receiver is saying, hey, guys.
Yeah.
You guys want to get on the bus with us?
Yeah, even Diaz himself saying, I didn't recognize this team. I don't understand what I saw on the field. I bear responsibility. So it's inarguable. It's not my opinion. It's not the sarcastic opinion of a Noel fan making fun of Miami, who throttled Florida State, I might add. But it is its own players and coaches saying, we failed you again. As much fun as that was.
There's a lot of Lene Kakuas out there.
Yeah. It was. By the way, I'm just gonna say I may print this out and post it on the wall. The rushing statistics for North Carolina. I mean, sweet Jesus.
That's a new record, man. That's something we do in NCAA. You know, we decide to slide the difficulty down one level. We're like,
or once you master it, and then you're like, well, this isn't any fun. I mean, that's not fun. This isn't fair. Nobody would actually rush for, 500 and whatever yards in a game of football. It's impossible. Not when people are actually attempting to play the game. I mean, you can't do that.
Two guys. Maybe if you had 3 or 4, right? Like the quarterback can run, and you got a couple of running backs, and you got a scat wide receiver that you got a really good jet sweep play for, or something like that. It's 2 dudes, 2 guys. Most yards by a tandem in the history of the sport in one game.
We'll come back to that, Tom, because there's so much carnage to document for them. But I don't want to completely ignore Florida's collapse at home as 24-point favorites against LSU, a team that could have given up 100 points the week before to Alabama. There was so much giving by our rivals from the weekend, just so much to celebrate.
The short part of it that I'll say is, when we play Miami or anytime there's a rivalry, and that is an SEC locked-in cross-divisional rivalry, they do a little montage at the beginning of the game. The shoe throw will always be there in that montage. Always.
It's unimaginably stupid, and it is something that young man I actually have kind of grown to feel sorry for. I can't imagine the hateful vitriol he gets on social media and message boards and the like, which, again, come on.
Yeah, it's not cool.
Not cool. But, my goodness gracious, that is high level of dumbassery is what that is. My goodness gracious.
At least his coach has his back. It was a football move, and he was in the flow of the game.
That, too, is once again high level dumbassery from their head coach, who makes a habit of it on a weekly basis. Man, put a mic in front of Dan Mullen as often as possible, please. It's just entertaining time and again to hear that level of stupidity. But, hey, listen, I got it. It's all right. It's a good season for Florida. Came up a little short. Good season, though. That's a tough loss. By the way, credit to the kid from LSU. That's a 57-yard field goal in the fog.
In the fog.
That's 57 for that ass on the road.
Mm-hmm.
Not too many college kickers are lining up from 57. I mean, Florida's kicker missed from 51. Of course, he couldn't do it, but 57.
He did the chomp, too, and I don't know if he was on the field or not, but if he was on the field while he was doing that, great restraint. Because,
from the officials.
Yes, because that would matter on the next kickoff, because we all knew Florida was going to get a crack at it. You saw the way that, I mean, they could go in 2 plays to Tony and get 60 yards.
Yeah, the official did show great restraint. Well, that's just letting kids play the game.
Mm-hmm.
Just letting kids play the game. I praise those officials. They were alert on Saturday night to see the kind of disrespect and personal conduct that ought to be flagged on the one hand, chucking a shoe halfway down the field.
And for the ref to describe that it was 20 yards. He was watching.
I like that he emphasized the exact distance. It was well done. Yeah. Guys, had he just tossed it a few feet, I probably would have let it go. But you can't chuck a shoe 20 yards down the field. What are we doing here?
I mean, it was 20 yards. It was 20 yards.
It was 20 yards.
Only 15 yards of a penalty for the 20-yard shoe toss. Automatic first down.
What a day. What a day. And we haven't even scratched the NFL, and we haven't scratched the fact that Jim Phillips is going to be the new commissioner of the ACC, and that is a slam dunk hire, a stunningly good hire from the ACC, which is largely incompetent. That changes today with the hiring of Jim Phillips. Huge news that he becomes the next commissioner of the ACC. My goodness gracious, you could not have a more forward-thinking, business-savvy mind leading the ACC, replacing John Swofford, who had become antiquated, certainly never had our best interest in mind. I'll leave the rest of the triangle to laud his history as a innovator, and instead we shall embrace Jim Phillips today. Sir, I thought of you first and foremost. You had to be dancing in the streets as you began to. Yes.
Yeah. Well,
dancing in the streets as you began to peruse that resume. And I did reach out specifically to people who know Jim Phillips, who've worked with Jim Phillips. So I've got a little handle on this one. I'll touch on it next. Jeff Cameron Show, 97.9 ESPN Radio. Real quick, before we get the segment started, I want to thank Alex at All Pro Land Care Maintenance. All Pro, they do a lot of things, frankly. But
equipment rental, too.
What they did do today was drop off an exorbitant number of gift cards for the kids at the Guardian Ad Litem to the tune of $500, I think it is. It's unreal. The kindness, the outpouring of affection, and frankly, money. Where it's needed from a lot of you. Travis, who's our neighbor here in the complex where the station is, gave a lot of money today, too. We've had several people drop off gifts.
There was a $250 gift on Friday, too, wasn't there?
That's correct, $250. Yeah, I don't know. I guess I'm not at liberty at all times to say everybody's name. I probably shouldn't have just done what I did. They haven't asked for that. So if I mentioned your name and you didn't want me to, I'm sorry, but I just want you guys who want the credit or not to have it, because I'm very, very thankful, and I very much appreciate it, and the folks at the Guardian Ad Litem do as well. Good on you. Kudos. Cheers. Let's keep it going. Let's keep it rolling. It's only the 14th. We've got another week or so to continue to do this, and tomorrow I'll announce a couple places around town where you can drop off your gift cards. Again, the Guardian Ad Litem asking for gift cards this year because they're not able to go and deliver gifts to the kids in need for this Christmas. So if you can do gift cards, preferably in $25 increments, but give whatever you can give.
We want to thank our friends at Budget Printing who have completed some boxes for us in which you can drop those gift cards. And the locations might be giving you extra reasons to come by as well, beyond the fact that you're just good and you want to help people in need. But we're excited to share those details with you as the week rolls out. But thanks to Budget Printing for putting those things together.
So I mentioned before the break, and yes, I'll get to Mackenzie Milton saying yes to Florida State in a bit here. That is big news. It's been a big weekend for Florida State. But Jim Phillips announced as the new ACC commissioner, that being announced officially today. The word was out there over the weekend, and it was mentioned by a number of outlets, and I continued to follow that story closely because I had once gotten into a conversation with a guy who worked at Florida State, and then later on worked at a couple other places, big-time programs, and worked in the administration in athletics. And he was always a great source of knowledge. I could go to him and ask him questions, sometimes about policy, sometimes about procedure, things that I wouldn't know and don't pretend to know about how certain things get done or don't get done. And he would give me examples, and he was always very careful about what he could tell me and how he would tell me these things. But I would glean insight from him about who's doing a good job in athletics across the country and who's not, who could maybe do better, which conferences had strong ADs at their member institutions, who had a strong conference commissioner, who was weak, what their perception was elsewhere. And Jim Phillips is a guy who seemed destined to head up the Big Ten. This was a slam dunk. He was going to be the guy, and he was one of the most respected athletic directors in the country, and what he had done at Northwestern was unprecedented. And everybody thought, well, young, smart, incredibly driven, a visionary, out in front of negotiations when it came to television deals, and he had a lot of thoughts well before we began talking on a regular basis about name and image and likeness and all of that. He had thoughts on that. He was going to be one of the guys that helped pave the way for the Big Ten with this. And so when he didn't get that job to head the Big Ten, and in the last second there seemed to be politics involved in that moment, at least for those that wanted Jim Phillips in the position, that seems to be the case, and they went outside of one of their own in the Big Ten. There was a lot of frustration amongst Big Ten fans and fans of programs within that conference. They thought, no, this guy has shown the vision, shown the leadership. We should hire him. Don't outthink the room. This guy's too bright. Just go ahead and bring him in. He's going to be the guy someday. Northwestern understood it. Everybody understood it. He was destined for bigger things. But it didn't happen. And that failing, and they've subsequently regretted it because of a number of missteps in the Big Ten, was the ACC's gain. And it was whether or not the ACC would bother to go outside the triangle. And would the presidents in the ACC go outside the triangle and bring in a guy who has connections certainly to a lot of the power players of the ACC? would they bring in somebody who was not one of their own? And the answer turned out to be yes. I was lukewarm on the names I was hearing when it didn't come to Jim Phillips. So today, to get the news that Jim Phillips is the guy is huge. And it starts with the fact that he was able to oversee massive renovations at Northwestern. And if you think about Northwestern who's playing for the Big Ten Championship, and you think about their first ever appearance in the NCAA tournament and all these other things, these accolades for Northwestern athletics in the last few years, you may have wondered where'd that come from. Well, good coaches, good players, hard work, all of that. But it started with this man, Jim Phillips' vision. There's a landlocked facility there, and he's got to renovate and change their facilities in order to bring about unprecedented athletic success at Northwestern. And he's got to sell this vision to a group of administrators, professors, and all associated with Northwestern, that athletics is the ticket to a greater academic institution. That the way that athletics aids academics is, and then lay before them his vision. And he's got to convince them, many of them skeptical, because, of course, Northwestern's reputation amongst the best of all universities academically is that, okay, we do play sports, but we are about higher learning first and foremost. We are about sacrificing for anything. If we are sacrificing for anything, it's academia. That's where our monies go. So you've got to sell this vision. You've got to lay out this plan. And he did that successfully. And that facility, as you've seen, Tom, we pulled it up online when we were reading about this. They documented it on College Game Day a couple of years back.
I remember reacting to it when it first opened.
Yeah. And
the videos.
We couldn't believe it. I said, they've got this at Northwestern. What in the world? Well, it was that man's vision. And it was what he was able to sell and get accomplished. And they have succeeded beyond their wildest dreams. They're playing in their second Big Ten championship game in 3 years.
At Northwestern.
Michigan could only dream. So this is a guy who also has been outward and vocal about his beliefs in terms of, like I said, name, image, likeness, reform, but also striking major television deals. And the people I talked to today that either know Jim Phillips or have worked with him, or certainly have worked with people who have had to work under him, and his work ethic is legendary, say that in all likelihood, the first order of business for Jim Phillips will be to address the ACC's deal with ESPN and its media rights deal in general. That this is a guy who has an idea, has a vision for what that should look like, and understands that the ACC is woefully behind in terms of the money and the media deal that they're going to need to negotiate. The ACC's media rights well behind in terms of what they make from the ACC network than, obviously what we're reading about right now in the SEC and the Big Ten network. It's available is the ACC network to nearly 70 million households, but they can do so much more just by bringing Comcast back into the fold or getting them into the fold and renegotiating their deal. It is also thought that they will add a player to the mix here in the ACC. Now, immediately, where do your thoughts go? If you're going to add a school to the ACC, why not one in which you worked? That's right. Jim Phillips worked at Notre Dame. Perhaps making Notre Dame a permanent member, then turning around and renegotiating the deal with ESPN now that Notre Dame's in the fold is what we're looking at here. One can knock on wood and wish that to be the case, because if it happens, it changes the financial dynamic, and that is dire. They have got to find a way to get that done.
Yeah, I don't know that ESPN will rip up their contract willingly. It might not work. It flatly might not work. Maybe you need to grab more teams than just one. And maybe this is how we move towards 4 power conferences instead of 5. But these are the tough questions that Jim Phillips has decided to take on. And he does seem to be equipped to help you bridge the gap. And that's all I'm asking for. I'm asking for somebody that doesn't come from the triangle, that's not a part of that world and that system, that's never given a damn about us and magically gives a damn about Clemson after all we've done for them leading up to the moment that Clemson finally got its act together for the first time since, who was it? Danny Ford, Danny White? I don't know who it was. Danny whoever. Yeah. It had been that long. It was Ford. They didn't care about us for 30 years, 25, 30 years. So screw them. And if you can get somebody who's an outsider, good. And if you can get somebody who can bridge the gap monetarily between where we are right now and where the SEC is going, all the better. Good.
Phillips has worked, as I mentioned, at Notre Dame. He did so with current UNC AD Bubba Cunningham. He worked under current Duke AD Kevin White. Whether we like Kevin White or not is immaterial, as he was one of the more influential voices in college athletics. He's got connections to a lot of the power players in the ACC, but he's not of the ACC in that way. And their belief in him and his vision and his aptitude and his way of convincing and negotiating is really what leads them to hire him, and that's good. That's where you've got folks that are in power positions standing down, deciding to take somebody outside the triangle because they believe that football and these television contracts and the way of the future is very different than what they've negotiated and what John Swofford has done here at the end of his career. Yes, good. Dawn of a new day. Let's get that done. Their belief in him, I think, is absolutely huge for those of us who root for Florida State and care about the ACC.
I wonder if one of his first phone calls that he received was the athletic director from Boston College. Hey, Jim, how you doing? Just want to introduce myself. Boston College, proud member of this conference. We really care about being a part of the ACC. I'd love to talk to you about the future of BC athletics as it relates to the future of the ACC. Please call me back at your earliest convenience.
Give me a ring, buddy.
Thanks, Jim. Good to talk to you, buddy.
I would think Wake would have made that call first, and then...
Oh, those are the two.
Those are the two to call to ensure. Did we get an email, everybody? Are we on the email chain? Is our name alongside Florida State, Clemson?
Dan Radakovich. Yeah. Was there an email sent out? Hey, David Coburn.
Did we get an email?
There was nothing that was sent, right?
Yeah.
My email's been, it's been acting up the last couple of
Has
days.
Jim sent, all points bulletin to everybody in the conference that I didn't get? Might have gone to my spam box. I'm not sure. Can you look and see if our name is on that at BC EDU? Can you look?
He didn't send anything. Dan, are you shooting me straight?
Oh, man. So, good news for Florida State. Good news for the ACC, in my mind, that they have made a hire like Jim Phillips. And, again, this is all brought about because most people thought that, look, he was destined to be a Power 5 commissioner. There was no doubt that was going to happen. Most thought he would be Jim Delaney's replacement, and it didn't happen. They brought in Kevin Warren, and that opened the door for the ACC. A lot of people thought, people are going to jump at this. There's a chance now to grab this guy, and I'm just glad it's us. Jeff Cameron Show, 97.9 ESPN Radio. was an article in the USA Today regarding Florida forward Keyontae Johnson. We spoke on this earlier. We'll bring it up again. Not the article itself, but just addressing that situation. I'm reading a quote. I believe this is from his uncle.
Maybe his grandfather.
Is that it? This is small here. I'm going blind. I'm getting blind, man. Trying to read this here, but so far we know that he has been transported from Tallahassee Memorial to the University of Florida, to Shands there, and so he has been stabilized. That part we've known for the last couple of days. There is thought here that he may have had activity in the brain, so they have induced it's a medically induced coma to keep him sedated. So we continue to hope for the best there. But
that line about the brain activity and sedation is a direct quote.
That is a direct quote, yeah. I should have printed this out better. I can barely see it. My apologies. I want the information to get out because a lot of people have asked.
Yeah, the USA Today has talked to a family member. University of Florida has not commented any further, but that's news to us. We thought he was still in Tallahassee, so he has been moved to Gainesville.
Yeah, according to that family member. So I don't know why you would make that up. I'm not saying he has, but there's nothing.
To be careful there.
But to be careful, and nothing has been official. All right, we segue to great news for Florida State. If you want to cue it up, I guess you can here. I mean, it's a grown-ass man, but why not what them kids doing? Fire it up, Tom Lang.
Hello once again, friends. It's time for What Them Kids Doing.
Look at that jibber jabber Jeff. What's that kid bench? How fast does he run?
Hey, who let you in here?
Look at him. I bet he can bench a lot. What them kids doing, Jeff?
Well, Mackenzie Milton, who we all remember somewhat fondly, if you watched him play, certainly, quarterback, UCF, was a superstar of sorts for a magical run for that program, one that crowned themselves national champions, but certainly one that was elevated by his exceptional play to the tune of nearly 10,000 yards in 3 years accounted for at the quarterback position, has said yes to Florida State University, will transfer here. That is a massive win for Mike Norvell. It is somewhat remarkable. I'm not going to lie. It felt like hoping against hope, Tom. It really did. Listen, I'm like everybody else. The second we looked like we were winding out the season, even at the time that we didn't know we were going to play this game against Duke that Florida State subsequently won, and it felt like maybe after the Virginia game was canceled, football was over, and all that was left to do was to monitor what kind of recruiting class you could possibly put together after this disaster of a season amidst COVID, but then also who could you get in the transfer portal. I'm always reminding myself that the options would probably be fairly slim. Given just how bad Florida State's been and how far they have to go, anybody worth a damn, in my thought, was, well, going to go somewhere where they could win immediately, going to go somewhere where they could compete for a conference, if not national title, and Florida State doesn't appear to be that team anytime soon. So it was with trepidation that I entered into the hopeful sweepstakes of Mackenzie Milton to Florida State the first time it was whispered on the interwebs, right? I thought, well, okay, it's certainly worth making a go. I mean, you have a go at it, right? You make your pitch, you swing for the fences, all the while realizing that there would be other suitors who probably had more going for them than did Florida State at the time. And so I just didn't allow my hopes to get to the point where I was consumed by this thought of we're going to get a quarterback, an accomplished quarterback, one who's played big-time competition and succeeded at the highest level, one who has shown that they have the quick trigger release we're looking for and haven't had here in forever. And by the way, that is what he's noted for. Now, I know about the ability to run. I'm going to assume that's not what it once was. But his great trait as a quarterback was a quick, accurate release, and it was NFL-esque. So to me, that's the huge upgrade right there. But again, I was not going to allow myself to believe it was possible until it happened. And then yesterday we learned It happened. He is committed to Florida State. He will be here. He had already passed the medicals test at UCF. He'll have to do that again here. But Florida State just saw their quarterback room elevated immensely.
Yeah, he's running the scout team for them this year, I do believe. This is a really fascinating move to me, just because it makes spring ball all the more interesting immediately. Which that's great, because we love promoting things here at ESPN Radio, and promoting spring ball gets a whole lot easier and talking about it. If Jordan Travis and Chubba Purdy are good with this, and that's, I don't want to go to the negative first, but if they're both good with this, there's a lot they can learn from this guy. There's a ton they can learn from him. And anybody who's ever dealt with him on the administrative side or the locker room side sings his praises. They love him as a leader. They love him as somebody who can bring culture to the table. And that's so critical to us. On the field, it's where it gets really interesting and fascinating, because he's not all that accurate of a passer. If you look at his numbers, his 2017 season is kind of the outlier. In 16 and 18, he throws for about 60%, just under 60% he's completing his passes. But then he goes crazy in 2017. It's because Traquan Smith goes crazy all season long. That's just a burner that nobody could catch at his level. So what kind of player is he if he's pocket mobile but not truly mobile, but he's also got the quick release, and this is an offense predicated on pre-snap matchup reads? Really fascinating.
I just know that in terms of experience in overall high-level play from that position in big games, having success, we just don't have it on the roster. We don't have it on the roster. He infuses that position, that segment group, this roster with something we just do not possess. And so let that competition begin. He embraced it in as much as saying, I understand that it's not going to be given to me, and I look forward to the competition. These are the kinds of things you expect a great leader to say, but I believe it to be true. I think he understands the situation. You don't have to come in and prove it. But a kid like that who's done what he's done is going to have immense confidence. He got to see Mike Norvell's offense up close and personal. Now, he lit their defense up and beat Memphis all 3 times he faced him, but he also saw Mike Norvell's offense go up and down the field against their defense, so he's aware of the kind of offense that Mike runs. And that had to have struck a chord with him just to consider coming to Florida State. Again, I can't stress enough how important it is that Norvell finds some wins in this transfer portal and in the recruiting game. We right now have our hopes pinned on a guy that has no relationships really in the state. His staff has very few relationships in the state. You're going to have to find a way to garner some momentum, and you're going to have to do it whether it be through transfer portal players like Mackenzie Milton and or surprise commitments from up-and-coming high school football players that you don't expect to say yes to Florida State currently. You're going to have to find those wins.
You've got 2 things going on to give you momentum. Number 1 is the Milton story. Number 2 is Gus Malzahn being fired.
Yep.
Because Florida State was in on a couple of the players that Auburn had commitments from or was looking to get signatures from this week in the early signing period, which is, right here, Wednesday through Friday is the early signing period.
Unbelievable.
Right. And unfair, especially for this staff. But this is the world we live in.
Yes.
And maybe, just maybe, Gus Malzahn's firing might put Florida State in on 1 or 2 players that Auburn was looking at.
Position. Yeah, no doubt. And when you think of Dillingham and where he was and those connections with those players, perhaps you begin to see the opening, just the crease you needed to find a way to get things moving in the right direction. And it would help to win another football game. We'll see if they do or not against Wake Forest this upcoming Saturday. But you come off that win, you get a win in recruiting. It does speak to the ability to present and convince players of the potential of this offense and this program. Norvell has got to find a way to convince kids to take a leap of faith, quite frankly.
Well, and that's where, too, every coach that gets fired, go look at their roster. I'm sure that's what they do. These guys are very buttoned up and organized, but every coach that gets fired, look at their roster, see if there's anybody that's low-hanging fruit that you can pick.
Oh, especially if you can find kids from, you can find kids from Florida that went to a place and they're unhappy. Things have, become tumultuous. Coaches are leaving. They've only been there a year. Mm-hmm. Maybe they were redshirted a year. They've still got 3 or 4 to play, and all of a sudden, they're from the area, something like that. You can go get them.
Okay, so Devontae Love-Taylor was FIU's best offensive lineman. Who's Illinois' best offensive lineman? Is that guy worth calling? Lovie Smith just got canned. So,
Might be.
That kind of thing. Those kinds of questions are being asked daily, and that's where they're going to go look for, if it's 15 or 17 kids that you actually sign in the proper recruiting class, then that means you got nearly double digits of transfers of that variety that you can go hunt down.
Bring it on, baby. Bring it on. Let the good news keep coming and see if we can get this thing moving in the right direction, or at least a sense of momentum that encourages and sweeps up other players who had not yet considered Florida State for obvious reasons. Maybe they begin to second guess and take a look around and reach out to those players that are saying yes about why it is they agree or buy into that vision. Ira Shafel, warchant.com, going to join us in a moment. Stay tuned. Number 2, Jeff Cameron Show, 97.9 ESPN Radio. Happy Monday. Hope you're well, everybody. Thanks for tuning into the program. Busy weekend, really busy weekend. The large part, a lot of successes, a lot of things that Florida State fans can be excited about. A football win, which is seldom the case these days. A recruiting win of sorts, which is seldom the case these days. A basketball victory, which is typical these days. And then some setbacks for the Canes and the Gators on the football field, which, especially that Miami one. You want to embrace Schadenfreude. That's one. I mean, sweet Jesus, you cowards giving up 900 yards of offense. You should quit playing football.
It was only 770, sir.
Jesus, Lord. Let's, before we do bring in our friend, well, I got to tell everybody first that all guests appear via the Phone Hero hotline. Phone Hero specializing in iPhone and iPad repair. 2 locations, 2915 Cary Forest Parkway, 833 West Gain Street. Online at phoneherotlh.com. He's Ira Schafel, warchant.com, the website. Go check it out. Lots to read about there. Hello, Ira. How are you, sir?
I'm good, Jeff. How are you?
I'm doing well. We should start with, I'm sorry for anybody that had to be there at the TLC-CC to see Keyontae Johnson collapse and suffer a medical emergency. And I know all of our thoughts are with him and his family as we still await more information. But I know you were there, Ira, and I know that had to be tough to see. And, man, it does certainly put a pall over us talking about sports. And I'm aware of that. I'm certainly aware of that. But we do talk about sports, and we will here as well. Let's start with, first and foremost, the football team getting a win against Duke. Your thoughts on what you saw there? We expected Florida State to be able to score, but once again, the defense was a disappointment, but a win is a win is a win.
Yeah, I think, and that was, to your point about Keyontae Johnson, that it really, everything else about that day should have been just a great day for Florida State athletics. But for the people who knew, but especially the people who were at the Civic Center before the game, for the basketball game, it was just hard. It was kind of hard to refocus throughout the day. You're just so worried about that young man, and we still are hopeful. But as far as the game goes, I thought that, they got such a great start. Jordan Travis played really well. Today we talked to Kenny Dillingham, and he said that was Jordan Travis's best game since he's been here. He said really, other than the interception, he said he didn't miss anything the entire game. Was really on point. Obviously the running is there. It was good to see some of those young skill players. We expected last week, we talked about, would Lawrence Toafili, now that he's got an opportunity and he's healthy, would we get to see more of him? That box was checked off. Ja'Kai Douglas is a guy that we've been hearing about early in the season and just kind of, I think he'd been banged up and hadn't really gotten a lot of opportunities. You got to see him and what he could do. That was checked off. There were a couple of nice bonuses. Hamza Nasruddin played a tremendous game. He was named ACC Defensive Back of the Week today. The offensive line, I thought, played well. That was the one big concern I had. I thought Florida State was, for where those two teams are right now, I thought Florida State's the better team at this point in the season, which says a lot because it just shows how far Duke is kind of checked out on this season. But if there was one concern, it was going to be on the offensive line against Duke's defensive front, particularly their defensive ends. And Florida State actually did pretty well in that area as well. So, other than a few defensive breakdowns, which, at least it wasn't 4 quarters of defensive breakdowns. I thought overall you came out of that game, you had to come out of that game feeling good. Especially when you looked at the limited numbers.
Well, and why don't we stay with Florida State football? We don't have to overanalyze that game. I don't want to do that. But I do want to talk about Mackenzie Milton, who is a kid that when the transfer portal became a discussion for all Florida State fans and the need to obviously seriously upgrade this roster and try to find a way to bridge the gap until you can have more success with some of the high school kids and you can show proof of concept. He was a guy that we said if you could get him and he checked out medically, that you would be really excited about. Although I certainly wondered if he would choose to come to Florida State because he would have other opportunities. What could you tell us about Mackenzie Milton's choice to come to Florida State? To me, it sounds like a bit of a love affair here between Mike Norvell and Mackenzie Milton. Mackenzie Milton seems excited to play in Norvell's offense, and I think that had to buoy Florida State fans everywhere.
100%. And I think it's as much a win for Mike Norvell as it is for the program, because he's not making that choice based on what he's seen from Florida State's football team in 2020 or 2018 or 2019. It is a bet on himself, and it's a bet on Mike Norvell, and I think that's a good sign. And what Florida State's getting is immeasurable. Again, I don't expect he'll be quite the runner that he was before, but he was cleared to practice at UCF. He'll have to come here and get cleared like he would. Any athlete would have to get cleared here. But it sounds like the expectation is he'll get cleared to play. We don't know if that running ability is ever going to come back, but he's such a gifted passer. And then the other thing that everybody talks about, and I talked to a good friend of mine was in the administration at UCF the whole time when Mackenzie was there, and he just said it's not just what he is as a player, but it's just he's one of those guys that always says the right thing, always does the right thing. Everybody loves him. He works incredibly hard. The kind of guy that makes everybody around him better, and that's what you want in a quarterback. And it's been a long time since Florida State's had that in a quarterback. So I think we'll see if he can reclaim the magic he had as a player. I think it'll be close to it. But just from what he is and what he brings to the locker room, I think it's going to be a huge success.
Yeah, Florida State just added a guy that accounted for nearly 10,000 yards in 3 seasons, and moreover, as you just correctly noted, says and does all the right things, and he began to do so immediately after announcing his commitment. If you read his quotes and you talk about why he chose Florida State and the reasons that he gave, that has to really encourage not only fans everywhere to get this great news, but also, I would think, his future teammates. He seems like a born leader. I don't want to overstate it. Again, we're going to have to see how he plays. There's a lot of upgrades Florida State has to make around him for them to take a huge leap forward next year. But I do think the quarterback room just got much better, and it can serve to kind of allow for Florida State, presuming that those kids don't want to now leave, to kind of take their time and not have to rush people along. You get a year here where you don't have to do that. You got an accomplished guy who's played in big games. We all remember him against Auburn. Had huge moments against Mike Norvell's Memphis teams. So it'll be fascinating to see how that goes, but certainly exciting. And I think for the final cherry on top, and we'll save basketball talk for another time, Ira. I don't think we need to talk about basketball today necessarily. I think that the big news of the day was that the ACC did something spectacular, which is shocking, and that's Jim Phillips. Let's talk about the hiring of Jim Phillips to take over as the commissioner of the ACC. I know you've got people in the business just as I do, and we talk to a lot of sources who've either worked with him or know all about him and what he is. This is an outside-the-box thinking, outside the triangle certainly thinking for the ACC, and to me, a slam-dunk hire, an aggressive hire, one that could reshape the conference moving forward.
I agree 100%. I mean, I don't know Jim Phillips, have not covered him, just knew of him. And I'll be honest, when I first heard about the hire, a little bit nervous because he is connected to Kevin White. He used to work for Kevin White,
yep.
who's the AD at Duke, used to be the AD at Notre Dame. And, Kevin White is highly, highly respected, but he's also kind of ingrained in this kind of ACC culture that we've come to know and not always love, and just not being on the forefront of things sometimes and being a little reactionary. He was in charge of the television committee for the ACC, and we don't feel like the ACC television network has been the big success that, probably people were led to believe. So that had me a little bit of concern, but talking to people last night, talking to people this morning in the business, at other schools, and people that I know, I respect their opinions tremendously, they're stunned. They could not believe that the ACC pulled this off, that they got Jim Phillips. They thought for sure he was going to be the Big Ten commissioner last year. And, we could talk all we want about the SEC, but, I think the Big Ten is, in a lot of ways, the preeminent conference in college athletics. And, he was supposed to be the guy there. They ended up making a decision at the last minute to go in a different direction. And I think they regret it. And he's a guy that, when you look at the challenges for the ACC, and there are many, and I've been very concerned, especially when you see those new revenue dollars for the SEC, and we know what the Big Ten brings in and the competitive landscape. I just have been really concerned about what the ACC was going to be able to do, and we heard some of the names we heard out there were less than exciting.
Yes,
as the possible replacement for John Swafford. But this, you really, if they have a chance to get back onto anywhere close to a level playing field with the Big Ten and the SEC, and ultimately probably the Pac-12 as well. I think the Pac-12 is going to get their stuff in order. Then this is the kind of hire that gives them a chance. Now, again, it's still a tough situation. That TV contract is still problematic. They're going to have to figure out a way to solve that. But if he's a guy that but if anybody could do it, it sounds like he's a guy that could do it. And I just hearing other people talk about it, the people that know and have real experience in that field, it's hard not to be excited about the changes that could be coming to the ACC.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's priority number one, by the way, is to straight up renegotiate that contract. They'll add another team to the ACC. A lot of speculation will begin now that team will be Notre Dame in earnest. And if that happens, they go back to the table and renegotiate with ESPN. That could change the dynamic, certainly financially, for the ACC moving forward. Even if it's not Notre Dame, I do know that that's going to be priority number one, and it's a good one because I think we're all wringing hands when we look at these numbers, as you just alluded to. Ira, always appreciate it, brother. Be well. Take care.
Thanks, Chef. Take care.
All right, you too. That's Ira Schafel, warchant.com. A lot of things to touch on there. I didn't need to touch on basketball. We talked about it in the first hour. And, again, it's nice to win for the seventh straight time over your rival. It's nice to see the emergence of a one-and-done superstar and all of those things. But, in truth, just a pall that hangs over that game. It's not Florida State's fault or anything like that. I'm not trying to avoid the fact that we got another win. But it just doesn't feel right, kind of overindulging in that celebration when a young man is fighting for his life. It's Jeff Cameron Show, 97.9 ESPN Radio. So we didn't talk about it much there with Ira, but I will mention Scottie Barnes registering his first double-figure scoring effort with 17 points, 7 of 10 from the field, 1 of 2 from beyond the arc, and a team-high 5 assists along with an electrifying 2 dunks of nasty proportions. Ooh, that's NBA stuff, and it's when you see it, it's so different than what you typically see in college basketball. Where he took off from with the left hand and the my goodness gracious, it's just.
And apparently Scottie Lewis was the one that was chirping a lot in the beginning of the game. If we're talking about just the basketball game itself.
Basketball, yeah.
And so therefore, when it was time to return to the court, yes, our Scottie said to their Scottie, "You're going down, man."
Well,
and then he danced in his face for a little too long, but
a little too long. Excitable young man. That was.
Don't need to be dancing on the baseline when they're inbounding the ball.
Yeah.
But
it was
a little crazy.
Well, I thought I had seen 2 vicious dunks, and then MJ Walker decided.
With the sociopathic step over, I'm not calling MJ that. I'm just saying it was so stone cold when he stepped over
Allen
the guy.
Iverson is,
But then he didn't do anything else after that. It's just jog up the court. I'm jogging up the court. Nothing to see here, guys.
Where he's at in his game, if you just think back to 2 years ago to where we are now, light years. He's come so far. The game comes to him. I think more than anything else, there is no effort to force anything. And 17 points, 2 of 5, 1 of 2 trays, 12 of 12 from the free throw line. It's crazy to score 17 points and make 2 baskets from the field.
Exactly. 5 shots from the field, 17 points. That's efficiency out the yin-yang. And here's the other thing, too. In looking at his breakdown preseason of what he did last year, to the baskets left is where MJ Walker did most of his damage.
Yeah.
This year, he hasn't really shot from there at all. So he's flashing the versatility of that he can score anywhere he wants to on the court.
Florida State, I said this after the win against Indiana. I'll say it again here. The upside is unreal when you consider the progress and maturation that you're going to get from a Scottie Barnes, who right now is already a freak and is only going to get better with the more college basketball games that he plays. With a fully refined, mature MJ Walker, but with the elevation of what Anthony Polite is now. And you could see his game moving in that direction last year. And he's a guy, again, we talk about developing players. Anthony Polite was hard to watch his first year here. Now, part of that is because he's awkward, he's lefty, he's kind of all over the map with the way that he moves. It's not very fluid. But he's a great defender who's turned into a confident shooter, a really confident shooter. And when you watch him, now granted he got hot, but that's not the first time we've seen that from him. When he makes a couple, look out. And he has the confidence and the go-ahead. 14 points, 12 of that in the first half, changes the game. 4 of 7, 3 of 4 from beyond the arc, 3 of 4 from the free throw line, 5 boards, 2 assists, a steal, block shot, all in 28 minutes. Just filling the stat sheet. It's just you realize there are a lot of guys that are going to become so much better than they currently are, more refined. Sadar Calhoun, a quiet game, 3 points, 1 of 3 from beyond the arc. But it's just 7 minutes off the bench. He's got to figure out his role. They've got to figure out what they're going to do. I'm at a place now where I realize that this team, when we get about 10 to 12 games in, any given night, it's somebody else's time to shine. There is a selflessness that really from year to year we've seen passed on now from veterans to the young players, and the young players who come in have already been accepting of that mentality, that attitude. Nobody seems to have a problem with deferring to the hot hand or the matchup mismatch, whatever it might be. And I just feel like they're going to be a really, really good. I feel like obviously I'm speaking to the choir, and this doesn't take great insight, but they cause so many problems defensively with the length. They do that every year, but they've got depth. They've got basketball skill. They've got quickness. They've got shooters. They've got strength. They got rebounders. Their offensive rebounding is always spectacular. They just do so many things very, very well. And the game itself is absolutely marred by what happened with Keyontae Johnson. It's hard to get too excited and go over the top with praise about what happened. I said that in the opener. But you can't ignore the big-time performance from Scottie Barnes. You can't ignore the talent of this team and where they are, where they're headed, and what they can be by the time we get midway through the ACC season. Knock on wood that is played and that they're able to play it safely. We'll see. That's up for debate right now. But goodness gracious, there's just a lot to like here.
A ton to like. And the best part about the offense, we've got a report coming out tomorrow on warchant.com, another analytics piece. Just looking at a snapshot of the half court offensively and defensively, broken up into 16 areas and how do you play in certain spots. Okay, so we would think that the offense is going to get much better near the basket because Balsa is going to be rolled out there more often in either starters minutes, or they're going to figure out what their big lineup looks like versus their small lineup. Scottie Barnes is going to get more comfortable in his own skin. You know, they're not quite good. They're not very good against the curve of the NCAA near the basket so far this year. They're shooting 50%, but actually you should score more frequently in that area. Mm-hmm. They're doing well from beyond the arc, but they're not doing well close to the basket. Scottie Barnes is a big reason. He's 11 for 23 around the basket so far to start his freshman season. But guess what? He was 6 of 8 against the Gators.
Well,
so as he gets better around the rim, that's going to open up so many more opportunities for easy baskets. We've been hitting 3-pointers to account for the lack of productivity near the basket so far this season.
The ability to soar well above the rim and lay off, the backboard with just so much touch, just lay it off the backboard, so much touch around the rim. Now, if he's not hammering on your head. If he's got the opportunity to the thunder on your face, it's going to happen. But if by chance you play good defense and keep that from happening, there's just not a lot you're going to be able to do because the strength and I think really for me, the almost poetic, he's a ballet. It's just beautiful to watch him manipulate his body in the air around the rim and just lay it up with touch. That's just it's not what you see for somebody his age typically, and it's certainly not what we see around here.
The good thing is, even though Trace Jackson Davis goes for 25 and 17 last week, if you look at the way we rim protect so far this season, we're 10% better than the average team in the NCAA, which puts Florida State in the elite category. Efficiency off the charts in terms of defending the basket. The one area we get hurt is in one of the corners for three so far, but as the data gets better and better as the sample size grows over the course of the season, you'll get a better picture of it. But we defend the rim. We don't get to the basket with great frequency just yet, and yet this team is 3-0 facing a couple of squads, including Indiana, which is the better example because the context of that game is, it's a full roster the entire time. We're more experienced at the time Florida State played them. So what is this team going to look like as the season progresses? It gets really fun.
Well, last year was a blast. Last year was us documenting a team on a quest that they had never accomplished before, which is to win the ACC outright by themselves regular season. Of course, they'd won the tournament title before, but we wanted to see that next step taken. It did happen, and you really thought, how could it get better than that? Well, given that they were robbed of a postseason, everybody was, but when you have one of those teams that is projected to maybe fight to get to the Final Four, you feel especially hurt by the cancellation of the ACC tournament and the NCAA tournament. And so we've all been eager to see what this version looked like, having lost 2 lottery picks, for goodness sakes, but also bringing in a one-and-done player like Scottie Barnes with the hype surrounding him, understanding that meshing that group with the veterans and finding roles to be played would be a little bit more difficult, and that especially early because you don't get those exhibition games and you don't get those tune-ups that you were going to have to play in aforementioned Indiana right out the gates in your second game of the season. You're going to have to play Florida, which had a ton of veterans, and again, understanding what the situation was in that game on Saturday. But you knew that this would be tough, at least early on, and that you wouldn't panic because you got a good team with a lot of talent, and in due time they would mature into something formidable. But to start out 3-0 with those opponents and to watch this begin to meld so quickly, you think it's exciting. I begin to start to analyze against a different curve. I'm looking now about how do I judge their performances game to game when I'm starting to think about them as, for the second year in a row, a national championship contender.
Right. Well, and there's another test tomorrow. It's not like Georgia Tech doesn't bring anything to the fight. They bring something to the fight.
Newly resurgent, to say the least. Now, we would have gotten really excited about the fact that they beat Kentucky, but then again, everybody does right now. So we'll see. But they're playing with real confidence.
It's a strange season for Georgia Tech so far. So they lost to Georgia State in 4 overtimes. They played a 4 overtime game, so it skews their point totals and numbers a little bit. Then they lost to Mercer. Mercer beat Georgia Tech. And I looked at the box score of that game. Mercer hit like 50% of their threes. They had 12 threes in the game. They had 22 assists to 10 turnovers. They hit 18 of 19 from the free throw line. Basically, it's an underdog's formula to beat a team that's better than you. Is you hit your threes, you hit all your free throws,
right,
and you don't turn the ball over. So that's what happened there. But then they turn around and they beat the hell out of Kentucky, and then they get a good win over Nebraska on the road in the ACC Big Ten Challenge, and they've got a 6'9" forward, same size as Trace Jackson Davis, who's putting up a double-double a game. He's 21 and 10 right now. Again, numbers are a little bit inflated because you play a 4 overtime game, but Moses Wright is a really good player, and he's not only doing his damage in the paint, he's actually somebody who can spot up and hit a corner three and extend the defense out with the jump shot. So Florida State is seeing yet another post presence tomorrow night that the defense, you can see it from game to game. How do the rotations look? Are their eyes in the right places and they're staying in front of the guys that they need to stay in front of?
Also, something that we don't think about necessarily, and it's again dark to think about, but how does Florida State respond to what happened on Saturday? I know they responded well in game, obviously playing at home and Florida making the decision, the players voting to continue the game, and Florida State responded well. I'm not trying to be callous, and I'm not trying to overlook the humanity of all of this, but Florida State's players were visibly shaken, as one would be, as anybody would be, anybody there, anybody who witnessed that. And as we continue to think about that young man, Keyontae Johnson. So I wonder, will their head be in the game of basketball right now to have witnessed something like that and to be affected that way? I wonder, will they be as gung-ho to play a basketball game as they normally would be?
Well, again, you have to tread lightly in how you describe this, but it's a delicate dance, and this is a sports talk show, and I mean this in the context of sports. But I thought there was a ruthlessness in the way that Florida State played on Saturday. I mean, they wore the villain's hat a little bit, and I don't mean about relating to
right.
anything to do with Keyontae Johnson. I'm just saying that in the second half, they had a mean streak to him.
Okay, so this is something that we were told before the season began would happen, and it was the influence of Calhoun and Scottie Barnes, that those two guys play with supreme confidence and that those two guys have a lot of what for that they bring to the table, and initiated that in practice from day one. So Calhoun was one of these guys, junior college transfer, that you're kind of like, okay, he's a gunner. He can really shoot. He's got athleticism to beat you off the bounce if you extend too far, and he's tough. He's kind of mean, right? He's got a little something to him. Well, that was always good to hear. You're like, okay, good. I like confidence players, especially if transfers coming in here. Let's see what you got. Barnes, knowing as an alpha and a dominant player and as a surefire NBA lottery pick, knowing that his main task was to get up to speed to major college basketball, but also to be a good leader because he was taking over for an incredible leader, maybe one of the best leaders Florida State's ever had. And so could a freshman do that? Was he mature beyond his years? Well, one of the things that helps you get to that place is if you're confident, but also it's not a fake false bravado, right? It's a real confidence brought on not only by skill, but also a maturation beyond your years and a willingness to talk despite being the newest member of a veteran club that has won a lot of basketball games before you arrived. And we were told that in practice, he did that almost instantaneous. He did that, yelled at veteran players when they were on the wrong spot on the floor, led the offense, engaged and really, really invigorated the defense, which was already really good. But he embraced the concepts, but also not only learning the defense, hands up at all times, getting on guys when their hands weren't up at all times. So that has come to bear, right? We're watching a guy do things that he ought not be able to do or certainly is seldom seen. And it really does manifest itself in that we're kind of nasty. I mean, he's chippy. He'll talk. He did that in practice. He did that against his own teammates.
He'll show you up, clearly.
Yes. So it's not like those were, falsehoods. We have found out now quite clearly this team, which, you know what? Him and Stan and CY and that staff, they're all great guys. And we've always embraced the efforts that they've made and their ability to teach, coach, and develop young men, both as players but also as human beings. And we get caught up in that because it's a great thing. It makes me proud of them, of the Noles, of the program. But they're all fierce competitors. They all want to win. They all believe they can win the ACC again and maybe march towards another appearance in the Elite Eight, Final Four, maybe win a national championship. They've also done a good job of adapting and meeting players wherever they're at. Whatever they need, whether that's an arm around you or a kick in the ass. I wonder how quickly they realized we got a team that's not afraid to be the bad guy. We got a team that's not afraid to be expected to win, handle that pressure, go out and tell you about it. Let's back up and let them do it. So long as they don't cross a certain line, we'll be here to make sure we redirect.
That's where
happens.
He got Scottie for dancing at the baseline. It was about a possession later. He's on the bench. It's where, hey, man, we don't need to be doing Fortnite dances.
So, right. I say that to my kids every night. So
I'm assuming that's what it was, but I could be woefully out of touch, and it's a different dance. I know he's doing the on the head thing on your head, but then after that, he's going into some sort of move, like he's Michael on the stage or something.
That's fine. I have fun,
but the ball's in play. It's not an N1.
Get back on defense. I'm gonna need you to get back.
Raekwon Evans is defending the inbound. He's running around Scottie, and Scottie's going. On your head. They're across the timeline. For God's sake, Scottie.
I'm going to need you to get back, sir. I'm going to need you to get back. Right, but I wonder, again, how early on did this staff go, geez, we got some guys now. They're not afraid. We're going to have to let them play.
The interesting thing for me is, I know what you're saying about is your heart in it, because as the storyline develops for Keyontae Johnson, you hear this news today, and maybe there's more from the university, just updates of how serious the moment was, and you reflect on that as a player. Well, that's one thing that you don't know how your players are going to react, and they already were weeping in the locker room, according to Leonard Hamilton. But then in the second half of this game with Scottie Barnes, he said that his own players were.
No, they were visibly shaking on the court before they went in.
Yeah, well, apparently they went to the locker rooms during the timeout as well, and that's when the two administrations determined what was going to go on, and UF said, let's continue. But Scottie's game almost seemed like a self-discovery at this level, too. It's he knew he could do it in AAU, but he's been talkative the first two games, but after what he did in the second half, I mean, he had a clear path in the second half again to do it on an empty basket. But his arm got tugged from behind, and he was sizing it up. He will not turn down the opportunity to rub it in your face, and now he knows he's capable of doing it against a team like Florida, which is much better and was pressuring the ball early in this game. Yeah, man, look out. I'm watching for tomorrow night to see what does he do next.
Well, I think, too, when you watch him cross the timeline, if he's in a situation where they're man-to-man and he comes down the lane and nobody helps, I mean, the look on his face is, I'm going to dunk on you now, and there's nothing you can do about this.
Well, yeah, consider what's happened in the last 45 minutes of basketball. For Scottie, he hits the big three to tie the game in overtime. Right. He has the game winner, and he doesn't even celebrate that. He gets back on defense. He gets his hands up a little bit. He's like, hey, acknowledge that shot. But he said, I didn't have time for that. Then in this game, he dunks on them twice, and he lets them know every nanosecond he can.
Emphatically, yeah.
Okay, who are you turning into? I'm interested to see.
A freak. One that we already knew athletically was that, but now where are you mentally? Well, confident. That's where you're at, and I think that at some point, he was what, 1 of 2 from 3 in this game? To have the moxie to take those shots when you're not really a pure shooter and that's not your shot. Mm-hmm. I love it. I really, really can't wait to see what comes next. I'm not talking about tomorrow night. Tomorrow night's another game. We'll see where their head's at. Hopefully they're locked in. I could see why they wouldn't be. I'm not making excuses for them. We expect them to have a great season, and we're going to measure against that curve. But I will say I do worry about that, but the sky's the limit. I mean, we were just talking a moment ago about, hey, look, this isn't a guy that's going to score a lot of points for you. He's going to dominate the game on the defensive end. What guard is going to want to go up against that, right? He's going to rebound the basketball. He's going to be tough around the rim. He's going to do a lot of those kinds of things. He's going to distribute really well. He's got great vision. He can get the ball down the court quickly because he takes such long strides. Everything was in relation to his body type, his athleticism. And, yeah, some of the skill is there, but we didn't think as a shooter he would be able to do enough to score 19 points or anything. We're just going to have that wrong because I think he's going to flush on quite a few people frequently.
Well, that's the thing. Like, if he shoots, I think that's even his own camp would say, whoa, that's different. We didn't expect that.
Yeah.
But if he can get to the basket routinely, and I mean through the contact and through the harm, and he's not afraid to, there's going to be a lot of open kickouts if he wants to, if he's bored, because they're going to have to crash.
Start knocking those shots down. Jeff Cameron Show 97.9 ESPN Radio. Jeff Cameron Show, 97.9 ESPN Radio. Tonight, Monday Night Football. After the show ends, we've got the game for you tonight. That will all happen after Front Row Knowles' first look. All that stuff's coming up when we wrap up and say goodbye. Busy weekend, great weekend, really, as far as what we cover and what we carry. I mean, we carry the Bucs, obviously, and then we cover Florida State. We cover lots of things, the NFL on the whole, college football, college basketball, you name it, Major League Baseball. But in checking the boxes, this was the weekend for Knowles fans. We just haven't had one. I was trying to think back on it. Tom was driving back from Tampa yesterday, went to that Bucs game. I must reiterate a couple things. They do such a good job there down in Tampa. Now, it's not because we carry the Bucs here and I'm a Bucs fan. They just do a really good – the fan experience, if you're going to NFL games, I don't know what it is elsewhere. I'm assuming – well, I know in some places, for example, last night you watched the Bills beat the Steelers. There's nobody in the stands, so it doesn't really matter. But in places where they can have people, I don't know if everybody else is doing a good job, but if they all did it like Tampa, that'd be a good thing. You'd feel comfortable. You're really never in a position where you feel uncomfortable there. And I'm talking about, I know lots of people have varying degrees of the precautions that they take, but it really fits for all. They're very respectful of everybody. And the way they set it up beforehand, when you go in, it's not crowded anywhere at the gates. They don't allow for it. And then also the way that they do a very good job of monitoring the sections. They're just not going to have it. If you're going to be a knucklehead, and you're not going to follow the rules, you're gone. You're gone. I watched a guy get escorted out on Sunday.
Really?
Yeah. Well, he was like, he's into the cups. He's probably 8 beers in, and it's the first half, and he just kept refusing to put his mask up.
Sir, it's a 1 o'clock kick.
It's Tampa, Tom. It's Tampa.
Even for Tampa, if it's a 4:25 kick, you've been out there in the lots,
in the
heat.
Yeah.
Offside, of course, because they won't let you tailgate, I'm sure, in the official parking lots. But, 1 o'clock kick, you had to be up for a while.
It's the National Football League, man. I don't know what it is about the NFL specifically, but this is where those that have had their lives go in a different direction than they wanted, this is their refuge. This is where they go.
Maybe they should do noon kicks, because I'll tell you what, when I went to Minnesota for the locally timed noon kick with the Buccaneers a few years back.
Getting loose?
No, they didn't have time. They were there. I mean, they didn't open up the
Time to
pregame
get in the building,
tailgate stuff until 10, because we wanted to walk around and just see what the game day atmosphere was like. I don't want to say it was lacking, but it wasn't busy until, and then after the game, they're only open an hour. People didn't really have time to go get crazy. It was a very subdued, kind of normalish professional setting, and one would think in Minnesota, they might like to throw down a little bit.
Oh, they do. I know. They get hardy there.
Now, the bars after the game were lively, but the tailgate scene around it was the antithesis of a Bills Mafia kind of thing.
Well, they do these zip ties on the seats. They do a really good job of ensuring that, if you have a section where you're supposed to sit, you sit there, and there's somebody that can be on the same row as you, but they're 10 seats down. I mean, they're nowhere close. And then there's nobody directly in front or behind you. I mean, not in the row in front of you or behind you. So it's 3 rows back or 3 rows in front.
You see that in a lot of places. Maybe here locally a little bit too, where it's just like, do you want the person's their knee still in your back? Is that COVID cool, man?
No, you don't have
like
that
an X,
here.
Like a weaving little diamond formation.
I'm just gonna be happy when we don't have to worry about this. I know I speak for everybody. When we don't have to adhere to all this, that'll be nice. But in the interim, we do, and you have to take it serious. And I'm glad that they do, and the experience is great. I will say this though, since we're on the subject, and I wasn't going to go here, but briefly, since we talked about it earlier, just to reiterate for those hopping in their car in the 5 o'clock hour. The Bucs aren't appreciably better than the Vikings. That game doesn't tell me a whole lot about. And here's a little hint for our Scuttlebucks this week. It didn't do a lot for me moving forward in terms of what I think is going to happen for the Bucs in a good way. I don't see it. There's continued miscommunication. There was one moment for a stretch, Tom, of about, I guess, a quarter and a half, and it's when they hit Scottie Miller, but. They pulled AB from the game. He runs such a lackadaisical route on the ball that Tom throws 10 yards behind him on the out where it looks like he's throwing away.
Yeah, that was he and Evans were in that area, and it looked like it was to nobody.
It is to nobody, and Tom's disgusted, and they pulled AB. That's on AB. I watched the sidelines. I saw the interaction. Body language suggests that's on AB. He ran the wrong play, ran the wrong route, something, and you could just see Brady look at him. Like, my lover has screwed up the play. You know,
that everybody's looking at Brady like,
there's your guy. Yeah, and then not long after, Scottie Miller's in the game, and then he hits him.
Because, of course, if you had Brady's 5 best throws from this season, I bet 3 of them are to Scottie.
Yeah, there's well, and here's the thing about that play. I had to sit. The 2 Bucs fans that are 3 rows behind me were idiots, and the guy that specifically that I'm referencing is that guy that missed calls and pre-calls before the refs call the penalty. He gets it wrong every time. He's that guy. Oh, that's got to be holding on them. I'm like, no, it's a false start on us. I don't say anything. False start. Next play. Oh, that has to be interference. No, it's an illegal man downfield. Have you ever watched football? Illegal man downfield. Next play. Well, that's going to be hands to the face. I saw it all the way. That's hands to the face. No, man, that's a clip. There's just he got it wrong every single time, including right before we kicked the extra point. My man's like, all right, here we go. 21 or 23. Well, it would have made it 24. 24, here we go. This is going to be getting out of reach. Oh, he missed it because you called it. And like everything else, you got it wrong again. It's unbelievable. But I bring that up to say this about just the Brady situation, back to the Bucs, the frustrations I feel. He had an hour to throw that ball. That offensive line is one of the best in pass protection in the league. The numbers bear that out. That play.
Miraculous how much better they've gotten with one player.
And that throw, sure, it's downfield. The guy, the idiot behind me, they say he can't throw the deep ball. Well, if he's got 10 seconds, he's going to hit somebody, sir.
Wait a minute. Did he watch the mid-level throw to Godwin?
Well, right. The mid-level throw to Godwin, the miss on the opening drive to Gronk. He's wide open. He overthrows him.
He's an above-average quarterback at this point.
Right.
Nothing more.
Now, the thing is, you can win with that with all that you have.
Right.
And you can win big with that.
That's not what you signed up for, though.
I would say this, and here's where we'll continue to differ. He didn't turn it over yesterday. And if we continue to play in a way where he doesn't turn it over, they're good enough that they'll beat people. They don't beat themselves in the way they did with Jameis. And I love Jameis. And Jameis can make more throws than Brady can make without question. We could do a lot of the stuff we're doing on offense with Jameis right now. We wouldn't have needed Tom Brady. I agree. He didn't turn the ball over, and he did live to fight another day. If you get anything out of Bowles in that defense, which they did get after the pass, our third down defense was very good.
Yeah.
If you get that, you can go a long way. You can win games. That's the one thing that I will say.
Yes, they're a wild card caliber team with upside. That's who the Bucs are. They are not a Super Bowl contender.
No, they're not a Super Bowl contender.
They're not a favorite. Let's put it that way. Anybody who makes the playoffs is a Super Bowl contender by definition.
And as we noted, the NFC, and you just saw the Saints lose to the Eagles, of all people.
Right.
So, okay, there isn't a great team in the NFC. It doesn't appear.
Correct.
Yeah. So,
correct.
Are we any worse off than anybody else in the NFC? Probably worse off than the Saints, who've owned us twice. But
you're hoping they get hot. And if they do, then they're really dangerous. They're a team that nobody wants to play because they've got more than a puncher's chance. But the way they're playing and the consistency of what you've seen this year,
don't know how you come out of a bye week.
They're a disappointing team. They're a disappointing team.
Yeah, I don't find the week-to-week assessment. That's not where I'm at because I'm for the end product. So I don't care if they go 10-6 or 11-5. Don't care. If you get to the NFC Championship game or the Super Bowl, I won't call it a disappointing season because I think he's back next year, and this is in my mind, a 2-year window to win a
there's
Super Bowl.
Still time to turn it around and get hot.
But week to week, I don't care about brownie points and looking great or anything like that. I don't care.
Right, but when's the last time you could say that Brady played a whale of a game? Vegas? Way back the Vegas game a long time ago? Yeah. When's the last time you could say that about the defense? Played a whale of a game.
The Green Bay game. They both actually played really well in the Green Bay game.
That's a long time ago. I mean, it's not just a week-to-week thing where it's like they're awesome one week and then, they suck the next. I mean, you got a month to 2 months now, closing in on 2 months, where you're going, guys, at some point, you got to turn it on.
Their third down defense yesterday was great. They set up 20-20. Minnesota moved the ball they want.
Yeah.
But then when they had to on third down, they made plays. They got to the quarterback. They created false starts and all kinds of problems for Minnesota. Shaq Barrett looks like Shaq Barrett again. He's beginning to play. Sue played well in moments.
Yeah, the best thing that could have happened, or the best number they put up yesterday, I think it's independent of some other stuff. Like Cousins takes inexcusable sacks in those moments. What the hell are you doing? But the number one stat that you could point to and say, wow, legitimately well done. Jefferson, 4 catches on 8 targets for 30 yards and he didn't burn you deep.
No.
That's really impressive.
Yeah, and I think for as dynamic as Dalvin is, I know he's a touchdown and over 100 yards, but you didn't
That was quantity.
Yeah, that was just quantity. I mean, they gave him the ball a lot. He's tough. It's interesting watching Dalvin, this version. Of course, we all watch him up close and personal, but the seats we get as an affiliate are down pretty low. You're close to the field. Well, it's the end zone he scores in, and we're right there watching him, and that's a man's run right there. When you watch that play, one of the things that stands out, he is stronger now than he was in college, and he was always strong. He is a stacked, and he was already muscular, but, this is his full-time job now, and you can see it. That's a rough play.
It is, well, even from the beginning, because he runs right up the backside of his lineman, and you've got to want to finish off of that. Some guys go, ooh, like a little sweet, and then they're done for the play.
No, he squared his shoulders.
Damn you, I'm going to bounce left, and I'm going to force my way in. And
he gets hit hard there. The ball's ripped out after he crosses the goal line. If another foot, he would have fumbled there. That is one thing he's got to – he has a couple of those every game where you're kind of like, man, that was close.
Yeah, Cousins yesterday too he fumbled the ball once. It went right back into his belly.
Yeah, the pressure up the gut late there was big. Everybody got in on the act. Sue got in the act. JPP got in on the act with a strip fumble, interception, however you want to call it. Shaq got on the act with 2 sacks. They had some things happen.
It makes total sense, though, if you look at quarterback hits and quarterback sacks. I mean, that O-line, I've watched it the last couple of years, especially because they play meaningful games this time of year and in January, and that O-line is always trash.
But they can run block. Yep. But they do a good job of that.
They don't pass off on twists. If you bring more than they can block, somehow everybody fails. They're like, well, there's too many of them. It's like, just block your own.
It's the Jeff Cameron Show, 97.9 ESPN Radio. Final hour of the Jeff Cameron Show, at least for today. Hope this Monday finds you doing well. Thanks for tuning in. I'm Jeff. That's Tom. We're online, ESPNTallahassee.com. That's where you go to listen live via the streaming free. Always don't miss any of it. If you do, go back, get caught up. We'll post all 3 hours to Apple Podcasts, wherever you get your podcast. You can email the show if you like, jcs at 979espnradio.com. On Twitter, it's at jcameron.show. Also, I would doff the cap to YouTubers watching us conduct the program as always. Let's get caught up. A lot to get through. It's been a busy day. It was a busy weekend. Really, unfortunately, it started with a very, very sad and alarming and soul-crushing turn of events. 11 o'clock, Florida State tipped off in basketball against Florida. It didn't take long before tragedy struck and Keyontae Johnson collapsed. We've been following that story like you guys have ever since. It's really been on the mind of most people across the country, I think, and no matter who it is you root for or who you call yourself a fan to, when you see something like that, it is a reminder, and a reminder that we're all people, and we're all rooting for one another to do well, and we all want the best for one another. That was arresting, is what I said earlier in the show. It was tough to get through. I was shocked they continued the game, but we've just been wanting to get updates in the hopes that that young man is doing okay. We do have an update. Keyontae Johnson was successfully transferred from Tallahassee Memorial Hospital to UF Healthcare in Gainesville by Shan's care. He is in critical condition still. Those are really the kind of updates we've been getting since he was transported originally to the hospital. But this is a bit of a turn for the better, I would think. This part of the update, Tom, he is following simple commands and undergoing further tests. So prior to that, we hadn't heard anything like that. So that's the latest. The University of Florida men's basketball Twitter account released that. I know the AP caught it too. It's been released several places now, but we wanted to give you that update as we started the hour.
That's important, though, because that's up to the minute. As you heard at the top of the hour with Christine Lisi on SportsCenter and us report last hour as well, there was the USA Today story with his grandfather being quoted, and his grandfather said medically induced coma. And the transporting from Tallahassee to Shands was news there.
Right.
However, this does differ from that just a little bit, in which you hear following simple commands.
Yeah.
And that would be wonderful, wonderful news if it continues to trend in that direction. Like you said, we're all human beings first, and our thoughts are certainly with everybody involved in his family, himself, and obviously the basketball program too.
Yeah, stunning turn of events. It made it very difficult for anybody, I think, certainly anybody in attendance and anybody watching that game to kind of embrace the rest of the contest as it played out. It did play out in Florida State's favor, but it was just hard to have the same fervor, certainly, as you watch the events play out as they did. Should be noted, Florida State does win that game. Florida elected to continue to play that game. I was kind of surprised. I'm not condemning. I was just kind of surprised on that. And really, I know it was upsetting and shocking and difficult for all the players on the court there and coaches and anybody involved in that. We continue, certainly, to wish that young man well. From there, let's go to the other items of the day, of which there were many. And for Florida State, they get a win on the football field for the first time in a month. They beat Duke. It was really one of those games that played out almost exactly as we described that it would. And I'm not saying that to beat my chest and to say, look at that, got it right. It just seemed fairly predictable, right? Duke didn't have a lot of interest in being there. Florida State's defense is terrible. We can't really engage in long stretches of success without something terrible happening. So Florida State gets off to an incredible start, up 28-0. It's going to be a rocking chair game until it's not. Next thing you know, it looks like it's trending in the same sort of direction, going all the way back to, say, the Boise State game, where you build a huge lead that you believe to be insurmountable, only to watch in horror as this other team, who at one point seemed inept, now looks like they're about to take the lead. But then you get a big play from Gant. Florida State ends up getting a turnover. Florida State ends up scoring, going up 35-21. At that moment, it seems to have stemmed the tide. Then from there, Florida State goes on to put up the numbers, and really Jordan Travis's best game. That is a minor footnote, Florida State winning 56-35 on Saturday. Really, I think the big news came not only in the form of a win, but the win in recruiting. Mackenzie Milton signing officially today with Florida State. Of course, it had been rumored, but I had remained sort of skeptical, Tom. I don't know about you, but I was fairly skeptical that Florida State would get the services of Mackenzie Milton transferring from UCF, the young man who put up nearly 10,000 yards as a quarterback there and really kind of guided the ship as they began to rise to prominence to the quote-unquote national championship that they claim. I just didn't know why that young man would choose to come here, given that I figured he'd have a ton of suitors and that we're not in a position to win right away. But in embracing Florida State, he had a lot of positives to say about always dreaming of playing for the Garnet and Gold and liking and getting to know Mike Norvell. That's a huge win for Mike Norvell in the recruiting game. Look, it's going to be a tough road to hoe. We've said that time and again. But if it's going to start to change and flip, you're going to have to get some better players in here. And you're going to have to get some momentum in recruiting. And in a weird way, these days, that includes the transfer portal. It certainly has to with the extended dead period and the early signing period now, which begins, Wednesday? So here we go. You know you're not going to win when it comes to high school recruits. You're not putting together an all-time great class. You're going to have to bring in some people to mitigate the damage done from all the losses the last several years and find a way to get some forward momentum where other people might begin to look at you as a destination again. And Mackenzie Milton is a high-profile yes, a very high-profile yes at the most important position on the field.
Yeah, and I'll be honest, I was sick of him as the front man for UCF because every week it was, why don't they get a chance? And Mackenzie Milton, and did you know he's from Hawaii? It was like the Nick O'Leary, Jack Nicklaus thing.
On we go, yeah.
I was sick of him, but now I'm not going to be sick of him. I'm going to love that he's here in Tallahassee.
Yes, you are.
Oh, buddy, what this does, it raises the floor for the quarterback position a lot. And what it might just do is expand the ceilings too. We might go from 8-foot ceilings to 15-foot ceilings. Who knows? Who knows? And for the kid or kids, both of them, that stay here, be it Jordan Travis and Chubba Purdy, because that's the world we live in now. Anytime a quarterback comes in, somebody seems to go out the door. This is across the country, not just a Florida State issue.
If they just dismiss the Rodemaker? Did you not even include him in the mix?
He's sticking around. He's here. That guy is a true Seminole. I can feel it. I can feel it in my Garnet and Gold blood. My blood type's FSU, and I can feel it.
So much so you forgot about the man in the quarterback room.
No, I don't have to think about him in this situation. That's why. I can get a blood donation from him. We both bleed FSU.
Yeah, that's what it is. Okay.
But they're going to learn a lot. Whoever else is in that quarterback room is going to learn a lot about how to play the position. And that's the thing that is so fun about that. It also creates maybe some more momentum in the transfer market. Maybe a couple of high school kids take notice and say if it's a 50-50, well, I want to go play with that guy for a year. Because
maybe a running back out of Alabama is looking at Florida State. You never know.
Well,
there are some rumors.
LaDamian Webb is in the transfer portal apparently, so there's going to be an opening there. Can I say my favorite 6 to 7 seconds of football on Saturday was watching Toafili stick his foot in the ground and go on the 70-yard touchdown. My God, that is a beautiful thing to watch.
You can say that, Tom, but I would follow that up by saying my favorite, 5 to 6 minutes of football or halves of football or games of football ever played happened on Saturday when Miami gave up 778 yards, including 554 of those on the ground, the most ever gained against Miami. A team that began playing football in 1926. It also made me smile to watch 554 rushing yards by Michael Carter and Javonte Williams. How is it one man can have 263 yards rushing and not be the leading rusher for his team? I'll tell you how, when Michael Carter has 308.
We have audio of a couple of those runs, actually.
Go ahead.
Stick him in your mouth and suck him. Stick him in your mouth and suck him.
Sounded just like that, the most ever by two teammates in a single game in the history of college football.
Stick him in your mouth and suck him.
Dubious record indeed, Miami, and it's yours, all yours. It was also fun to watch Florida lose as a 24-point favorite at home to LSU, guaranteeing no chance to play for anything meaningful. Good year, though. Great year. You guys played well. What a shame. Tragic. 57-yard field goals are hard to come by. Yeah. Well done, LSU. The shoe toss seen around the world and watched on a loop at my house.
Yeah, it's too obvious, but who throws a shoe anyway, right? Random task from Austin Powers.
Yeah.
That's exactly what the hell just happened there.
And it was glorious. Gus Malzahn has lost his job. Kevin Sumlin probably needed to be fired long before he was, although also should have never been hired. What a mess. All these guys, I'll have more on that momentarily. We have some thoughts on those that lose their job but then receive handsome paychecks.
What was your favorite dunk of the weekend? Of the big three. There's the first one from Scottie, then there's Scottie on Scottie Crime, and then there's the step over, which was an awesome dunk, too, from MJ Walker, and to stay on his feet afterwards.
That dunk was my favorite.
The MJ
Walker dunk, because it was somewhat unexpected, and I love where that game has gone, where his game has gone. Again, it's been interesting trying to kind of navigate those waters and talk about a seventh straight win over Florida in basketball because it really wasn't first and foremost on our minds for anybody that watched it. Instead, Keyontae Johnson was on our minds and continues to be. But they did play the rest of that game, and Florida State did win it, and you did see signs that Scottie Barnes, who's special, is only going to get more and more confident as he plays each game, and he's got one tomorrow. And we'll have a court report for you tomorrow against Georgia Tech, Florida State facing a good Georgia Tech team. So the contests keep coming. It'll be interesting to see. I alluded to this earlier, whether or not their head is in the game for that. I don't know how anybody wasn't shaken to the core, and that includes our players with what they saw on Saturday. I know once they returned to the court and played the game, Florida State played with great vigor, and that's a testament to focus. But that can be hard to sustain, especially if you have a chance to reflect. So we'll see. Should be noted, I mentioned Mackenzie Milton. Quote, "We are fired up to have Mackenzie joining our program," said head coach Mike Norvell. "He's a proven leader who will help us continue to establish a culture of excellence in everything that we do here at Florida State. I've seen firsthand Mackenzie's talent, competitive drive, leadership skills, which will be incredibly valuable to our team on and off the field. His return from injury has been an inspiration to so many people, and we are looking forward to his next chapter here in Tallahassee." Of course, he played 23 games with UCF, including an undefeated season in 2017. They were the American Athletic Conference champions, finished his career as a 27-6 record as a starter, is the only two-time AAC Offensive Player of the Year. Look, he was an incredibly accomplished player. Quote, "Florida State speaks for itself," said Milton. "When you hear FSU and see the garnet and gold, that's something that is rich in history and great players, both past and present. It's a school you dream about going to as a kid. Getting that opportunity as a 23-year-old man is a perfect way to end my college career. I have a tremendous amount of respect for Coach Norvell from competing against him and then getting to know him during this process. I'm extremely grateful to have the opportunity to play for him and Coach Dillingham. This is a great opportunity to play at the highest level and be around some of the great teammates and great players at the same time." It's exciting. He talks about the process of competing for championship starts now, and I know it's not going to be easy, that I'm excited for the next chapter. I'm looking forward to being part of the quarterback room, supporting Jordan, Chubba, and Tate. They're going to push me to get better. I'm going to push them to get better. We're going to hold each other accountable. We're going to do the work that it takes. Hey, man, I'm loving this kid. That's what you do. So it is. Mackenzie Milton says yes to Florida State. I don't think a lot of us believed that was going to happen. That's a big, big win for Mike Norvell. The ACC's got a new commissioner, and they chose the right man. I'm excited about that. We got to talk about coaches that were fired. Got some NFL. We got all kinds of things still to get to. Stay with Jeff Cameron Show, 97.9 ESPN Radio. A lot of big news today. To reiterate something we've talked about off and on the show today, last hour, especially with Ira, the ACC has named Jim Phillips the next commissioner, and that is really, really big news. That's listen, this is a guy that within the industry is as well respected as they come. He's also a guy, I talked to somebody today who's worked with him and knows him, and he said that you won't meet anybody who works harder, but he's also a guy that is always thinking ahead when it comes to name, image, likeness. He's going to have a handle on that. He was out in front of that 2 years ago. He's a guy that has thoughts and ideas of his own about how to handle that as a conference. He did as an athletic director. This is a guy that has negotiated and worked with people on something that they were originally thought to be, brought along kicking and screaming. And that is when he's at Northwestern, he has to sell this vision of this massive project, right? This athletic facility at a school that is primarily known for its academics, and rightfully.
We've talked about this athletic facility in the past because it's palatial and it's stupid gorgeous, beyond palatial, really.
Yeah, and it is unreal. He's also talked about reform with television deals. He's been at the forefront for all of these, and I know that's music to your ears,
You're damn right it is. If he wants a sycophant, go redo that ESPN deal and tear it up and write us a new one, and I will be his new, like you were to Swaffy, I'll be to this guy.
Well, that was tongue-in-cheek with me to Swaffy.
I don't know.
He had been on numerous NCAA committees, including the Division I Council and the prestigious men's basketball selection committee. He's overseen major facilities renovations. That's what I'm talking about with Northwestern. He had to go to a place where athletics wasn't as important, and he had to sell it to not only the money people, but all of academia. This is where athletics helps fuel us as an academic institution. This is what you guys have to understand about what we're trying to do and why it's important that we all rally in support of this major enterprise. Hundreds of millions of dollars to build this facility that's second to none. And he got them to do it.
So you all can write papers that nobody reads. Exactly.
Correct. And think about what he's done. He's overseen those renovations, and they've had unprecedented athletic success at Northwestern. I mean, men's basketball reaching the school's first ever NCAA tournament. Football, they're going to play in the Big Ten championship. Again, second time in 3 years. Northwestern, what are they doing? Michigan wishes they could play in the Big Ten championship. So here's a guy that has been innovative. He's smart. He's energetic. He's as hardworking as they come. He's for what it's worth, he's one of these guys that arrives at the office sharp at 5 a.m. He stays till 8 p.m. He's always chasing ideas and working on ways to implement these visions of the future. This is a guy that is going to step on foot or, step on campus, if you will, for lack of a better term, at the home offices of the ACC and say, we're doing this all wrong.
Yeah, and he wasn't
here's what we need to do.
Grown out of the ground on Tobacco Road, which is
Correct.
Nice. He's not part of that system. That is that's music to my ears. If he could get ESPN to rip up the deal and write it, I don't know why they would. We're married to that awful contract through 2036. It pisses me off so much that I need to check myself on the FCC anytime we talk about it. But if he finds a way to parlay, let's say, Notre Dame joining in football into a reason to have to re-execute an agreement with ESPN and or looping in NBC or CBS, which now is going to have some rights open up, and you can get the double dip going, hell, maybe the cherry on top of giving us some third-tier rights to go sell to Sun Sports, which won't happen. But you can find a way to get that number up. I mean, listen, the announcement last week of what the SEC is about to command from ESPN is alarming.
It is very alarming. Absolutely it is. And he worked at Notre Dame, so this is a guy that has that working relationship, I think. The ACC, obviously, it's been well noted, isn't one of the media rights giants of the Power Five. Matt Fortuna wrote about this in The Athletic. You can read that piece as well. It has been significantly helped by the ACC network, which launched in April 2019, has a nice footprint, and it, we're looking to extend the media deal with ESPN that runs through 2035. It's well behind the SEC network and the Big Ten network. it's available to nearly 70 million households currently. They want to get that up because, let's welcome Comcast into the fold,
Yeah.
you dumbasses.
How about Tallahassee? Well, not even Miami. How about Miami?
Right.
They don't get it. It's a footprint looks like a piece of Swiss cheese.
So he'll renegotiate these deals, and that's going to be first and foremost, and then you can begin your celebration of all things Jim Phillips.
Buddy, between that and Steve Cohen owning the Mets, I mean, good God.
The
Heady
days,
times.
the days are brighter. Jeff Cameron Show, 97.9 ESPN Radio. Mentioned it in passing, what a busy weekend it was. So many things to touch on. Really, it deserves probably more vetting. We do have the rest of the week. I don't know why I'm rushed. we can do it. But I always highlight these moments when they happen, and what better time to do it than drive time right now. You do realize we've entered into Kiss My Ass on Main Street season. This is the time of year where Kiss My Ass on Main Street becomes prevalent. And it happened over the weekend. We had a previous Kiss My Ass on Main Street that I mentioned in passing. Now, that was Muschamp a few weeks back, in which he received $15 million not to coach South Carolina anymore.
Ball's free.
Yeah, yep. And that's not the first time that's happened to him, to collect large sums of money to not work any longer. He's parlayed several failures into Kiss My Ass on Main Street moments. But this isn't about him. This is about Gus Malzahn. They finally got their wish at Auburn. They've been wanting to fire him for all 8 years that he's there. He has the most wins against Nick Saban of anybody in the SEC, and it's not close. But couldn't save his job this time around. This time it's fired after a win. They win by 2 touchdowns. They're like, that's it. You're out of here. They fire Gus Malzahn, and he will make $21.5 million not to coach Auburn.
Ball's free. Ball's free.
Well, it'll be a good start to the new year for Gus Malzahn, because on January the 12th, they have to cut him a check for $10.25 million of the $21.5 they're going to owe him.
Ball's free.
Sweet Jesus, what a broken, sorry business college football is. You've got to be kidding me. Get a grip, athletic directors. He's not the only guy. Kevin Sumlin, drunk, got fired. He'll get paid $7.5 million not to suck at Arizona anymore.
Ball's free.
Lovie Smith, I thought, had Illinois playing pretty hard. I don't know what you can reasonably expect ever at Illinois. Then again, it's been 5 years and he's not done anything. So they're going to go ahead and pay him $2 million to go away.
Ball's free.
That's a lot for that program.
Yeah. Like I said earlier, Gus Malzahn was, Will Muschamp was the first to join the merry-go-round of buffoonery and make $15 million. The guy that's the puppet master for all of these coaches, well, maybe not all. I didn't double-check every single name on this, but most of the time it's Jimmy Sexton. And he leverages one against the other immediately following the firing, and the vacancy opens up, and he'll take one of his other clients who was recently fired by one of his other clients, and then they'll mix and match the two, and he'll get those guys jobs again with huge buyout clauses, and some stupid-ass AD will go, I guess I got to do it. That's what'll happen. Texas's athletic director, Chris Del Conte, had this to say about Tom Herman. Now, Tom Herman will remain at Texas. He has not done well at Texas, to say the least, but he will remain at least for another season. Here's that quote. How Luke-ass warm are the waters for Tom Herman when he hears his athletic director, Chris Del Conte, say this when asked about his head coach. There's been a lot of speculation about the future of our football program. My policy is just to wait until the end of the season before evaluating and commenting on our program and our coaches. With the close of the regular season, I'll reiterate and, and state on the record that Tom Herman is our coach. Okay. I mean, my goodness. That's not, we stand behind Tom Herman. We think he's going to do a great job. The future is bright here at Texas. You know, Tom's getting his guys in now. We can't wait to see what's in store for Texas football in 2021 and 2022 under head coach Tom Herman. That is as sterile an ounce of support can be, right? I mean, that is a vocal.
The ice, man, it's as thin as a Ritz cracker.
Woo! There's been a lot of speculation about the future of our football coach and our football program. My policy is to wait until the end of the season before evaluating and commenting on our program and our coaches. That's, sir. Okay, Tom Herman. A spokesman for Texas confirmed, I read in The Athletic, that Del Conte has decided now to bring Tom Herman back for the 2021 season. Herman is 31-18. He's 6-3 this year. Since that big win when he first got there, when they beat Georgia in the Sugar Bowl, they're 14-9. So, you know, we get into these conversations all the time about supposed momentum in bowl wins. Yeah, it doesn't exist. It doesn't exist. And this is one of countless examples where a program gets a bowl win or has a moment in the sun in a bowl where the team that was the underdog beats the team that's the favorite. I always bring up motivation in those games for a reason. And then the fan base immediately thinks, this is the springboard. This is going to be the cornerstone of all things to come. Not really. Not really. Tom Herman's been 14-9 since that win. That's a whole lot of doing nothing.
Florida State examples, they had the win over South Carolina. The next year, they didn't even win 10 games. You had the lazy victory over Northern Illinois in the Orange Bowl. Went on to win the national championship.
On to win the national championship after getting ripped for that win. By the way, Herman, had he been told to have a good day, and surely Texas is amongst the schools that could have afforded it, would have had to pay him $15 million. The staff he's put together and what they pay their coaches, which is why it's another sweetheart place to go coach, they would have owed the staff over $10 million in monies to be paid to the assistants. So Texas has decided it's a rough year to make do. Rough year to fire folks.
Maybe, and I guess we are approaching that place where you can almost say definitively that COVID and the pandemic are going to reset the market for coaches. It has to, right? Or at least the guarantees that they're given.
I think,
athletic departments need their coaches to take pay cuts. Do you think that their salaries are going to be returned to the full price?
No, but I would just say that if we think things are going to change all that much, these schools, many of whom, in this case, by the way, South Carolina, for example, the aforementioned, don't have the kind of money. They don't have Notre Dame money. They don't have Texas money, and they're paying guys to go away in a year in which they're suffering the worst losses athletic departments have ever suffered. $15 million. So I guess my argument is that if we believe they're going to come to their collective senses, I don't know why we think that. They just never do.
Well, because
they never do.
For me, it would be because the athletic budget realities and the amount of people you're cutting in personnel.
Wouldn't that reality be in play when you decide to fire a coach while he's still got a couple years left on his contract?
They're not all in positions like we are in which you've done that twice within a 3-year span. That would be, that would be my thing, where you're paying off a lot of coaches and coordinators. I know that Jimbo obviously owed us a check, but when you're talking about paying Willie down, you paid off 2 places. You paid off USF and Oregon, right?
Yeah.
And then you had to pay off coordinators, and then he had around 2 of his coaches that you had to pay. So, I think that they're in a bit of a different situation. Muschamp's been there a little while. But when you're talking about coordinator hires and head coach hires up and down the athletic department and the pay cuts that they had to take, there's a funny way of when pay cuts happen, of them just kind of sticking and becoming the new normal.
Yeah, South Carolina, though, it was said earlier, had to make cuts to their athletic department, so I'm not buying it. They were already in some financial issue, and they fired Will Muschamp anyhow. And I just the SEC is going to do what they're going to do on behalf of football, and I think any institution that cares about winning championships is going to do that kind of thing too. It is more about, I know we've had this discussion over a long period of time about whether or not an athletic director would ever have the courage, because his job's on the line, ever have the courage to just say to these coaches who always want extensions and more extensions well before their contract is up, if somebody's doing an average job and they come to you with 2 years left on their deal and say, well, because of recruiting, I've got to be able to extend now. These athletic directors are going to need to say, yeah, no, man, I'm not extending you. Do better. I can get somebody for the same amount I'm paying you right now, and I don't have to pay you off. You've got 2 years left on your deal. Go coach, and if this doesn't work out, I'll bring in somebody else, probably pay them a little less, and they can be just as butt-ass average as you are.
Yeah.
We'll see. I don't know. I mean, it would take courage.
Well, this offseason's worth of hirings would tell you a little bit about the future market.
That's true. Chef Cameron Show, 97.9 ESPN Radio. note that when the show ends, first look, Front Row Knowles actually documenting a victory. All right, then, 56-35. I rightfully called a shootout when we did the pregame show on Saturday.
Like shooting in one direction and then another one, and then finally the Knowles put it to bed. But yeah.
Win's a win is a win is a win. I'll take it. It was on a day where obviously, you look at Florida State's winnings and what happened to Miami. Historic embarrassment that the program may never recover from. How in the world, if you're Manny Diaz, can you look at your players in the face? 750, whatever. Jesus, just quit now. That is humiliating.
You should see if you can get Bomani on this week. Just so you guys
the two of us can laugh it up.
You should
again?
have a standing conversation and appointment anytime somebody runs for 500 yards on somebody else, and it's like not an FCS versus FBS. If it's a Power 5 game,
real. I mean, good Lord, guys, you're playing for the Orange Bowl. You're playing to go to the Orange Bowl, and that's what you gave your people after all this time. You said, "Nah, we really don't need it." That was absolute, and to a team that lost to Florida State.
Not enough. Need a lot of work.
Oh,
Need to get a lot better.
yeah. And the basketball team for Miami lost, and the football team for Florida lost, and then their coach sounded like a buffoon, as he always does. I mean, this was, obviously, again, mindful of real-life stuff with Keyontae Johnson, and we continue to wish him well. But other than that, the results on the field, and I don't say that loosely other than that. I'm just talking about the games themselves. Florida loses football, Florida loses basketball. Florida State wins basketball, Florida State wins football. Miami loses basketball, Miami loses football. Mackenzie Milton says he's coming to Florida State. And there's a lot of rumor out there. There's some other big names about to say yes to Florida State. That's what I'm talking about. Now we're getting down and dirty. Here we go.
That's right.
Let's go.
Have pancakes been cooked? Do you think that's what's going on here?
I'm not caring to ask, Tom. I don't care the reason.
Yeah, fluffy Bisquick pancakes.
Let's go. It's time to get it on. Enough of this nonsense. Let's get to.
Yeah, fluffy Bisquick pancakes.
That's right, sir. That's right. Let's get down dirty in the muck. You got to do it.
Yeah, fluffy Bisquick pancakes.
Yeah, I'm with you, brother. I'm with you. That's what we do. It's time to win some games up in here. That's ridiculous. When I heard that news come down, I was like, here we go. All right, some people care around here.
Yeah, fluffy Bisquick pancakes.
Next time we see each other, I'm going to chuckle like I just chuckled. He's going to chuckle like he just chuckled. We're going to wink and nod. Good to see you, Coach.
If I'm around, I'll just go, yeah. Fluffy Bisquick pancakes.
There'll be a knowing nod. We'll sit down and eat. Everybody will be happy.
For next year's spring conference, press conference, or fall, whichever one allows us in the building first, you should wear a Bisquick shirt. Like a T-shirt.
Just get one. Yeah. Have them send it to me from the company.
Jeff, go ahead first. Good shirt.
Yeah, that's a nice shirt. Yeah, I'll tell you what. That was needed the weekend that was, the shot in the arm that the weekend was. And we'll see. Again, Florida State's got so far to go. And really all that's left are those moments of schadenfreude, although we provided a couple wins to go along with it on the actual court and playing field. That was nice. And, by the way, who knows? I mean, if the weight game indeed goes on, I don't know. I'm not counting us out after what I just saw with Louisville. So
that was interesting.
That was weird.
One would think, given all the problems at Louisville, that would have been a walkover for Wake.
Yeah.
Was not the case. The opposite happened.
A lot of strangeness again, and college football limps to the finish line with real credibility issues on the season. But that was always kind of going to be the case. We understand that. Nothing really new about that. It's funny. I make fun of Dan Mullen because of what he had to say about the shoe toss and all that nonsense. But what he said beyond that I think is accurate. Not that they would have gotten in, but I don't know. Maybe we should have played less games. Yeah, Yeah, no, I've been saying this all year long. Apparently, it doesn't really matter. It doesn't matter if I play 4 and you play 10, and you increase your chances of losing in an upset fashion like you did on Saturday night, because rules. What rules, man?
Yeah, he's got a point, but the larger point is you were 24.5-point favorites, Dan.
Yeah, and you lost at home to a team that just got boat raced and could have lost by 100 to the team you play in the SEC championship. So I get all of that, but the point, his larger point, even though he's a doofus and easy to make fun of and does any number of things says and does any number of things that opens him up for very easy and real criticism. He's not wrong about the apples to oranges. He's not wrong about that. That's what I was saying. Like, Alabama not having to play, or for whatever reason, whether it's the problems with other teams or issues they had, whatever, starting late. The bottom line is, listen, is Ohio State probably one of the, from a talent standpoint, like you do the SP plus ratings and all that stuff. If you looked at their recruiting classes over the last 10 years and the success on the field, are they probably one of the best 4 teams in the country? Sure, but that's not how we do it. You got to play those games because things like that happen. Upsets happen all the time. And if you don't put yourself out there to play the same number of games as everybody else, man, it's nonsense. And I'm not blaming them. I'm just saying this whole thing is a sham. Like the other night, again, we were having so much fun with this. Arizona State, when they beat Arizona, were playing their 3rd game. They had played 2 effing games. What are we doing?
Certainly. And also, upsets do happen a lot, but 24.5-point upsets, not nearly as much, especially within the construct of Power 5.
No, that's a stunning collapse.
It's something else.
It's a horrific loss if you're a Florida fan. Embarrassing, indeed.
It's a continuation, too, of the 2 95-yard drives they gave up to Tennessee in the 4th quarter. If you think about what the Florida defense has done.
It's revealed. There it is.
In the last 5 quarters. That is absurd and terrible.
Well, I mean, it's going to be on display when they face your Heisman Trophy winner at Alabama.
Probably not top 10 worthy, honestly. If you're capable of that, I don't know that you're a top 10 team.
Well, I know that that's going to be a far cry and a tough day at the office trying to stop Alabama's offense if it starts humming, because that's not a good matchup for those 2 teams.
So somebody I know may have jumped in a hypothetical future and gotten Alabama -11.
Well, that somebody did a really good job. I did not get Alabama -11. That is amazing.
Just somebody I know.
Well, that person did a great job, and I'm proud of him. I didn't even think about it. Good God. I'd give Alabama -24 right now. What is it? Is it -24?
That's a great question. I'll check it.
30
at the close of today's show.
Yeah. I didn't even. Let's look at it later. It'll change. It'll shift all week long. But I was wow.
I'm sure it's moved since the person I know got it. That's for sure.
11, doing some things. Also tonight we have the Monday Night Football game, which should be a good one, between Baltimore and Cleveland.
It's currently 17.5. Run to the window, sir.
It's going to keep going. I am going to run to the window there. I would also say, by the way, that as far as the NFL goes, I love you teasers. I love you more every day. Teasers. You know what my teaser was yesterday?
I do know what your teaser was yesterday.
Did you go look at it?
I saw the hypothetical potato chip package.
Yeah. Another victory right here.
Well, the Tennessee one was that felt very easy, didn't it?
That's stealing.
Yeah.
That is stealing to take Tennessee and pepper that down to a point. What are we doing?
Peppa.
I was like, goodness gracious. The one I was most worried about, the other side of that, was the Bucs. But
and it was Yes, if Dan Bailey had half a leg.
Yeah.
No,
I still would have got it by a half point, but it still would. Yeah, it would have changed the momentum of the game.
I too was quite the teasing fool yesterday, and
I'm just never going to do anything other than that.
The Chiefs were the other end of it, and that ended up. It started oddly, but the Chiefs pulled away, and Miami actually backdoored on the number.
Oh, I know, because I took Miami and the 7.5, baby doll. That's what you do right there.
That's a Richard Simmons gif.
That's right. Got that backdoor cover. Hey. Well, it was 10-0 Miami in the second quarter. Where you going? Damn it.
I said, So I guess it's not that kind of a day. It's not a teaser Sunday.
Well, it's weird. Teams struggle to adjust down in Miami, and that you have a big special teams touchdown, then you have a really fluky touchdown. There's a couple of things there. I know Kansas City's a lot better than Miami, but that game got weird for a while, and then it got regulated, and then Miami
then
came
it
back.
got chiefed for a while. there.
Yeah, it did. That's what they do, those quick scores. But, yeah, man, and now we see the Steelers falling off a cliff. That Bills team that I thought was the second-best team in the AFC, I'm going to stick by that. I do think they are. They're a problem.
I saw
They're a
Greenberg's run behind them after he told everybody about 6 weeks ago, I didn't forget this, that the Patriots were going to win the division and the Bills were about to tank. But now he's all behind the Bills.
Well,
got to keep those receipts.
Got to keep them, but I'm telling you, the Bills you could have seen 4 weeks ago. I mean, there were some things going on there where you're going, okay, they're doing things better. They're getting better in areas on defense. They're not as good as a lot of people I think they are defensively. But I like all the weaponry on offense, and I like the style of play.
Yeah, the prediction was on the strength of Cam Newton and Bill Belichick together, the Patriots were going to run down the Bills by Thanksgiving.
Well, the Belichick part could have been right. The Cam part,
Stop predicting things by holidays. Easter, Thanksgiving, just stop it. You're going to be wrong.
Yeah. So coming up next, Front Row Noles First Look, Noles victory. That's always good to listen to that show, win or lose, but it's nice after a win, especially nice because it's rare. And then, of course, tonight, Monday Night Football. We got it for you right here on 97.9 ESPN Radio. That's Cleveland and Baltimore. Stay tuned for all that. Take care, everybody.